Can you guys hear me? So I think right now you guys are all muted, so nobody can hear you on Zoom. So the council chamber is muted.
Even with the microphone, you can't hear
Oh,
us?
now we can hear you. Okay, so you have it unmuted now. So that's great. Thank you. Just wanted to let you guys know.
Thank you.
Okay. Also, I did want to say something. So let me know if when's the appropriate time to just say a few words.
Yes, you can say a few words. Thank you.
Okay, great. So first of all, thank you for serving our community. Really appreciate it. This year, I'm the assigned council rep, so I just wanted to introduce myself and thank you guys for your wisdom and insights in trying to make this community a more beautiful place. So I my main role, at least the way I see my role here, is to help you guys understand maybe some of the issues that we need deliberated. I kind of expect you guys to have at it and really try to unearth all different perspectives, really try to make sure that objections or things that might be issues are really unearthed and debated thoroughly so that when we review your minutes, we can get a feel about what's happening and we can save time on council. So I see that this is a very important work that you guys do in terms of the recommendations you make. So I kind of expect you guys to um, really have, thoughtful, thorough, perhaps even difficult conversations. And that I think that's kind of like, at least from my perspective, helps us on council a lot in terms of being able to make the best decisions for the community. So I personally take your guys' recommendations very seriously and respect the work that you guys do. So just want to kind of put that out there. I don't have any particular agenda myself, like for you guys. But I want to say it's an open door. So I've served on the Planning and Transportation Commission, and I think it's best that you guys work kind of independently and try to really make sure that you hear all different perspectives. But if you guys need me to attend any of the meetings, just let me know and I could show up and attend. And any of you guys are welcome to book office hours with me if there's an issue that you want to discuss or if there's something that I could do to help make it better. So I just wanted to let you guys know about all that. And maybe the last thing I'll add is just that definitely I think more community generated art is awesome. So think about that. But I'm sure you guys are going to try to source art wherever you guys can, the best art possible. But before I kind of leave this meeting, just wanted to see if there's any questions you guys might have for me before you guys do your work.
Anybody have any questions, Lauren?
Councilman Tanaka. Thank you for serving as our liaison. How does the council decide who will be our liaison?
Oh, the mayor decided. So it was purely, pretty much the mayor just assigns people, and I got assigned to you guys this year. So I don't know why, but
well, how fortunate for us and for you. Thank you. We look forward to working with you.
Absolutely, absolutely. Any other questions? Okay. Well, hey, thank you guys. Oh, sorry, was another question?
No, I was just going to say thank you and welcome.
Appreciate it. Okay, so I'm going to sign off now, but again, I'm always available for discussion. And if there's a time that I'm needed to talk or something you guys want to bounce ideas off of, I'm happy to do so. But I really kind of see this as an independent body to really kind of flush out the issues on items. So and I've seen you guys do this before, and so I think it's awesome. So look forward to more great art in our city. Okay, thank you guys. Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you. So I am going to go back to the suggestion that we move the 3200 Park Boulevard agenda item, non-action item, up to the second spot. So we're going to adjust the items as such. And then we're opening it for public comment. Does anybody have public comment? for items, public comment for items not on the agenda.
Thank you.
Claire.
And I have no, I see no raised hands at the moment.
All right, then we're going to go to the approval of minutes for the November 17th meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, thank you. And then we're going to,
Roll call.
sorry, yes, roll call. Thank you. Thank you for the reminder. This is my first time out here. Commissioner Gordon,
Yes.
Commissioner Miyagi,
Yes.
Commissioner Shen,
Yes.
and Vice Chair Waltuck, yes. So the first action item is the adoption of resolution. So this
We have a
is-
couple of city comments
Oh,
to
sorry.
squeeze in first if we
Okay,
can.
yep.
So I just wanted to let the commissioners know that we do have God, it seems so loud. An open call for walls that is out. So we are going out to the Calif community and reaching out to some of those property owners to see if they might be open to letting us commission a mural on their walls. We also have the current call for muralists, which we're getting tremendous response to. Not only a huge amount from the Bay Area, but across the country and some great international candidates as well. So we're really excited the way that that is turning out. And all of those calls are, of course, available on our webpage. And that's it for city comments.
I have a question about the call for walls on California Avenue. There's so many vacancies there. But those are renters. So are we reaching out to the property management owners? How does that work?
We're trying to reach the owners. Yes. And we have several on the list and quite a few of them are also involved with the Calif Business Group. So our liaison in the city manager's office who handles economic development is helping us reach the right people.
All right, so no more comments. And we can go to the first action item, the adoption of resolution, the approval of resolution authorizing teleconferencing. So Commissioner Gordon.
Yes.
We need a motion.
Oh,
Oh,
sorry.
I
Motion.
move that we adopt the resolution of using teleconferencing for our public art commission meetings.
Second.
Okay, roll call. Commissioner Gordon,
Yes.
Commissioner Miyagi,
Yes.
Commissioner Shen,
Yes.
and Vice Chair Waltuck, yes. So now we have the non-action item, public art and private development for the 3200 Park Boulevard, former Fry's site, and we have a guest presentation.
Wonderful. Thank you, everybody. I'm also joined here in the meeting room with Claire Raybold from planning. She is the planner for this very complex project. And so I think what we're going to do is go ahead and turn this over to the consultant team who has joined us remotely to walk you through a little bit about the site. And they have their public art consultant, Jennifer Easton, on board, who will walk you through some of the potential spaces for integration of public art into the site. It is a project that has a % for art requirement, and the funds come out to are estimated at $840,000. There are some complex issues with the site about the future use and what spaces are public and where public art may go, and should it be associated with the interesting history of the site, which was here in your packet as well. So looking for direction about, is it a viable spot, a viable site for public art, for the full amount, for a partial amount, and any direction that you may have about themes, locations, or types of work. So with that, I will turn it over. I don't know if Jennifer Easton's jumping in first, or if we have someone from the Sobrato team.
Actually, the entire team is present. So Jennifer, the floor is yours.
Tim or Rob, are you wanting me to drive on and while you present?
You're presenting, young lady. Tim Steele, Senior Vice President, Subrato. Rob?
Good evening, Rob Tersini, Vice President, Subrato.
And I am Jennifer Easton, the art program, the art consultant for the project. I'm actually more, let me pull this up. I am working to share my screen momentarily. Oh, hold on. Always a challenge getting that part of Zoom to go. I'm on Zoom.
There you go.
Yay. So Tim or Rob, do you want to walk us through this first part?
Sure. If you want to go to the next slide. The project's overall site is made up of 5 parcels. Parcel 1 and parcel 3 is an existing cannery building that has been partially occupied by Fry's in the middle. The left-hand side, left third of parcel 3 is currently occupied by an R&D tenant. And then the right-hand side, based on our application, is going to be removed and will incorporate 74 townhomes. Parcel 2 is made up of 3.25 acres, of which will be dedicated to the city. The city's current plan is for the far left edge of that to approximate 1 acre to be a high-density BMR parcel that the city will manage and control through an RFP process. And then the remaining 2.25 acres to the right of parcel 2 is going to be used for a future park. And so as the cost value of the projected value of the townhomes, the projected value of the improvements to the middle portion of parcel 3, the addition of a garage, tenant improvements, and all that is estimated about $84 million, which will provide approximately $840,000 under the art ordinance. Next slide, please. Probably should have jumped to this. This shows the removal of the 1/3 on the right and the placement of 74 townhomes. The new parking structure, which is necessary to relocate the parking from the future dedication parcel to the city on the bottom of this page. And then 340 will be refurbished, and then 380 has already been refurbished and existing. Next slide. This is an image out of the Page and Turnbull historic report that the city had completed on the site. It shows that middle section of the building back in approximately 1946. The design of our refurbishment of the remainder building is looking to this for inspiration, and you'll see it in some of the images later. Next, please. These are existing condition pictures. The monitor roof portion there, the monitor being the 2 pop-ups, if you will, is the piece that's, if anything, architecturally significant, and we're going to spend a lot of effort in our refurbishment of this property to restore and repurpose that space. This is approximately where Fry's front door used to be, and they occupied the internal space where Fry's, where these monitor roofs are. Next, please. The internal part of those 2 monitor roofs specifically have this old wood truss system that we are going to go through significant effort to repurpose and continue to use. The building being built in the early 40s has not been structurally upgraded, has not been electrically upgraded, plumbing upgraded or not. So there's a lot of work that needs to go into this space to bring it up to current code, structural code, fire, what they call MEP, mechanical, electrical, and plumbing, as well as structural. Next, please. There's additional slides showing other conditions of that internal space. And you can see in some cases, it looks like the mezzanine is going to fall down in that upper left-hand picture. Next, please. Here is where we start to replicate the exterior With guidance from our historical consultant, we've developed guidelines, historical refurbishment guidelines that we are following, trying to honor the past, but at the same time, the property with the removal of a portion of it isn't technically qualified for the Secretary of Interior's guidelines for historical refurbishment. But we're still trying to follow those to preserve that spirit of the prior use. Next, please. This is an additional image of it. It's the opposite end, and this end is reflecting what the ad hoc committee had spent a lot of time about wanting to have some form of an element of retail, but also an element of a connection to the inside truss system of the two monitor roof portions. And what we don't see in this yet, but the retail actually, if you follow the dark color along the right-hand side, goes into that space with a hard lid, and then has skylights that allow the tenant, the retail tenant, and their customers to look up through that skylight and enjoy the truss system above, as well as the glass in the front, allowing for public viewing. This retail space is going to be facing the city's future park, as well as the right-hand side of that would be facing the townhomes. Next, please. The opposite side is, this image is showing the one level garage that we are constructing that will accommodate the relocation of the displaced parking on the opposite side where the future dedication to the city parcel resides. Next, please. There were drying sheds along this edge of the building back in the 40s, and we are trying to repurpose that concept here as part of the tenant experience between the retail or the R&D refurbished space and the garage, and soften the transition between the two. Thank you. Next. Another view looking from the tenant entrance through that space. Next, please. And this is looking opposite direction back towards the view that we just showed you. This is a rendering of the concept of I'm inside the retail space now. Let's say I'm getting a cup of coffee. I'll be able to look up into the truss system that'll be occupied by an R&D tenant. Also within this retail space, we are going to be developing an image documentation of the cannery space and the operations and historical piece. We are now doing the investigation and research on images that we could be using for those modules. Next, please. Landscaping. This is the plaza outside of the retail space. And the ad hoc committee, the city representatives were very interested in having some kind of outside interaction with whatever retail tenant's going to go in the space. There's where the red is on the right is a raised wall that you can sit on and enjoy. There's 4 red umbrellas there that we had, if you recall in the earlier rendering, there's outside seating for the retail tenant. And then on the left under the tree, you can see there in a darker yellow orange is another raised seat wall around that provides for additional seating. Next. Again, this is the other side with some of the images. Again, for the landscaping between the upper part being the existing cannery building, and then the bottom across the bottom would be the garage. And these are, it's a very long building, but these are an attempt to show you how they interface and they're restored. Again, additional interface between the garage. And then finally, open for questions. And I'm remiss, we also have, I believe, attending our representative from our lead architect, Evan. I apologize if you're out there. I didn't see you, so I just jumped in and took your spot. If you would introduce yourself. Still not seeing them. So anyway, we're here, Robert and I and Jennifer, to answer any questions. Jennifer will take over with the specific presentation regarding art opportunities.
Are there any questions that people have right now before I get going with the artwork?
I have a question. Is the plan for the original building that's being refurbished, is that whole area going to be used for retail?
No, and this image is a good image. In where it says C and D, you can see on the inside of the building is a square line right in that corner. It's approximately 2,600 square feet. And then within that little square is a smaller square, and that's the approximate location of the skylight that's in that space.
So just the small square is the retail, and then what's all the rest of the space being used for?
The left-hand side is already occupied by an R&D tenant, Playground Global. The right half is space that was occupied primarily from Fry's when they vacated it in 2019, 2020. Where the townhomes are on the right is the portion of the building that will be removed that is currently occupied with R&D tenants. And our plan is, once we refurbish that middle section of the building, we will relocate the existing tenants into that space and then remove their portion of the building. So there is no additional R&D being added to the project. We're just moving things around and removing a portion that was essentially equivalent to the square footage that Fry's was in to provide for the housing portion of the project.
Thank you. Does anybody else have questions?
That's good clarification.
All good?
Can I ask you about the dedication of the land to the city? You said there it's part of parcel 4 is going to be given to the city. Is that correct?
Correct.
And it's going to be a BMR parcel.
It's 3.25 acres. The city, Clerk can chime in, but the city has suggested that approximately 1 acre of that 3.25 acres will be designated for BMR housing, and the remainder 2.25 will be used for parkland.
And I'll just note that we don't currently have a design for the below market rate housing, but the CEQA analysis that was prepared for the project assumed up to 75 units as a potential, just so that we, analyze sufficiently so that hopefully anything that goes in would be covered by that.
So are you saying almost equal to the townhomes is going to be another set that's the BMR housing?
Yes.
And when will that be determined if that's going to be developed?
This, following the dedication of the parcel, the city would begin working with finding partners to work and get enough funding for that project. So we would be partnering, for example, with a organization like Alta Housing, some sort of nonprofit housing group that would work with us to develop that. So.
And can I just ask a budget question then about the 840 funding for art? Does that also go to the housing that you're planning?
No, part of the development agreement, in addition to the 3.25 acres dedicated to the city, is also a $5 million fund to the city that's completely separate from the public art.
And the $5 million will go towards building?
It can go towards either the park development or the BMR developments at the city's discretion. So presumably some amount would go to both,
Okay, thank you.
One other brief thing I just want to chime in on is that parkland, keep in mind, is along Matadero Creek. So just like we did with Bulware Park, there is a certain setback because there are discussions about naturalizing that park. So quite a bit of it would be taken up with that process should that happen in the long term.
Is it possible to go back to the first few slides where we were shown, the breakdown of the lot, where the townhomes were, where the new restoration areas will be, and then also, the parcel that is being given to the city, so that I can be oriented a little bit better. Thank you.
I'm trying. My computer is not cooperating, but I will try momentarily. I'm going to stop share and see if I can get out of that and then see if I can go back into it. Hang on just one moment, please. Technology. I don't know what's happening. Okay. You wanted the site plan?
Yeah, I think we found it in the package. Thank you very much.
Hey, Jennifer, this is Rob. I'm happy to share my screen if that's easier for you.
Yeah, it might be just because for some
Okay.
reason it's hanging up. So if you have it.
Yeah, no problem. I'll do that. And then Claire, Morgan Burke, our landscape architect, is in the general. Is there a way to nominate him to a panelist?
Yeah,
Can you go back, Rob, maybe to the first slide? It shows the whole site though.
Oh, sorry,
I think
you're on mute.
That's what they're
I
interested in.
okay. Yeah, no problem.
yeah, I think it didn't make
There
it
you
into
go.
the packet, but
Yeah.
there we go.
Yes.
Yep. And then
So
I'm sorry, did I cut out? Oh, you did promote him. Okay, thank you.
Parcel 2, which has, the whole area near Matadero Creek and then crosses over Matadero Creek out to Lambert, would all be part of the city dedication parcel.
And that would be split between the park and the house.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a little confused about parcel 3 because in the package it shows 340 Portage as some of these townhomes. Am I getting confused?
340 Portage is part of the cannery building
Okay.
right now.
I think there's multiple addresses in the site, so that makes it a little confusing too.
Yeah, so it starts at 200 Portage and goes up to, I can't remember exactly. There's like 3 addresses on 200 Portage, and then 340 Portage and 380 Portage are all part of that existing cannery building.
May I ask about the parking? You said 1 level parking. I'm seeing 2 levels here. So how many parking spaces? I'm assuming, of course, you guys work all that out. There's an equation for that. So
It's
okay.
2 levels, ground level and 1 level above.
Got it.
So Jennifer, back to you.
Okay. Thank you. All right. So here we are. Oh, back slide. Thanks. Yeah. Okay. Hello, commissioners and staff. I'm Jennifer Easton, and I am working with Sobrato at this point to help kind of give an overview and give some thought into what the public art can be for this project. I think Elise spoke earlier to the constraints of the site. There's some great opportunities and a lot of community interest in hopefully you had a moment, if not to read the Page and Turnbull historic report, so you were possibly familiar either outside the report or through the report of the kind of the long history of this site, and that and its cultural significance as well, being developed by a Chinese immigrant to the United States, Thomas Fung Chu, who between his canneries in San Jose area and here operated the third largest cannery site in the United States at the time of the early 20th century. So it has a real interesting cultural significance to it that we're hoping, while not to be the historic element of the site, which is another piece of it that we'll get into, I think the artwork definitely could think to a theme around the cultural impact of Thomas Foon as he went by, as well as the impact that a cannery of this magnitude had to the workforce, especially women, after Mr. Foon died. It was taken over. The cannery continued through the war, was an important job site for many women who were stayed behind during the war. So it really has a very interesting history to it that I think could be touched on both by the art and the historical signage that is being considered for the site. Next slide, please. So the primary art opportunity that we're looking at that we were speaking to before is this retail corner. And here you're seeing it in this image in relation to the housing. So there's a street that goes along the east edge of the building. You see that retail corner that's happening here. And we're standing as if we are in the park at this point. So Park Boulevard is to our right, and the park itself, the feature park, is where we're standing looking over to the building. Next slide, please. And here's another view, which you've already seen. You see the bench that's currently being considered on the left, the kind of the retail frontage, that curve element, seating element, and some of these, seating areas. And also I want to draw your attention to the north face, which would be where you see those sort of trees along the edge. Another potential opportunity, I will mention that we have not, the design team and I have not been in conversation. We don't have an artist on board yet. So exploring these options and opportunities between the elements we're going to discuss tonight haven't been fully fleshed out. But these are really kind of appearing on the property. And as you've kind of seen, this is really the public, so what is being called the public side of the building, as opposed to the other side, which is, where the parking is. It's where the tenants will have space to be outside. So we really think of this as kind of the public face of the project. So in your knowledge of public art and private development, we really want to focus in on those areas where the public feels comfortable going, feels welcome, and feels like they can engage. And this is why we're focusing on these two areas. So next slide, please. And the other opportunity, and this is kind of the way back image, is the west and southwest face of the building. So next slide, please. As you come up to it, it's the lower right slide is the corner, and these trees will actually be remaining. So the west face, which is where that mural continues off to the left on the lower slide, is a very long street, but it's obscured, predominantly obscured. And the slide that's in the upper left is the image from, again, where will be the future below market rate housing, looking sort of towards this is the board form section, which is the current R&D. So this partial wall is another area where you might get people, again, coming along. There's a bikeway potentially that's going to be built. So walking out towards El Camino from either the park or the housing, that wall there is a potential opportunity for what I would say probably be a mosaic piece is our consideration, because as you know, paint does not do particularly well, as we're seeing here in these southeast or southwest exposures. So we're definitely thinking along the lines of something more of a mosaic type of project, type of piece. So next slide, please. So again, this is just an example of the types of mosaics. The one on the left is from a home savings and loan. It's a Millard Sheets, early mid-century mural. And then the one on the right is actually from the New York MTA. It's a contemporary mural along the same ideas, thematic of history and telling stories through art. Next slide, please. So one of the things that, the project sort of falls into two kind of areas, I would say, of consideration. The structural history of the building, which is being considered through the architectural features, the fenestration, the building looking up into the space from the retail, and then the monitor, keeping the monitor roof line, as that echoes the historic aspects of the building. So our consideration at this point has been that piece is really being solved or considered or dealt with, preserved, I would say, in the architecture itself. So really, in the art, I'm really thinking that what we would want to look to is somebody who could be thinking about integrating that cultural history, whether it's about, as I spoke to earlier, Thomas Foon, who you can see here in the hat on the left, or the workforce. He particularly had a very diverse workforce for him. He built worker housing on site. A lot of his workforce, and you probably read this in the report, but a lot of his workforce were actually people who were not welcome necessarily into full society at the time. And so he gave them a place to eat, a place to earn a living, and a place to have community. So was it really that, and then the subsequent owner of the cannery really did provide an important source of jobs to the region during that time. Next slide, please. So some of the artists, and I'm just going to go through, I just pulled a number of artists who I thought kind of started speaking to the ideas about, where the project might go. Sculpture would be a harder challenge. I mean, one of the things that we've talked about as a team is that if, as you see, the site's rather constrained. And so one of the discussions that Elise brought up and that we're having is that the project will actually come through in two permit phases of roughly equal magnitude for the art budget. So about half and half. And because of the constraint of the site, we're thinking that it may well be the best benefit to the city and the community to do about half the budget with on-site art development and put the other half in lieu for future projects. So just thinking along that framework, if you have thoughts that you'd like to give on that, we'd love to hear them. But just because, again, you saw the constraints of the site, but we do want to make sure it's a rich opportunity. However, with the park, there will also be another opportunity that will generate public art funds as well. So again, could be a continuation or an echo or another dialogue with the same themes or ideas as are occurring in this project, which could be very exciting. So Veronica Ryan is somebody who has done a number of sculptural pieces that have to do with fruits and vegetables, and they are actually more culturally specific. Next slide, please. Ming Fei is another artist, again, who has done similar types of projects. Obviously, I'm not speaking to the only parts of their work, but these are things that kind of resonate with the ideas of what we're dealing with. One of the things we were talking about with the park is, wouldn't it be great to have somebody like this who could actually create things that could be crawled on by kids and interacted with? So we could potentially consider, as you see in Ming's work here, a more vertical element. We were chatting how Thomas Foon was known as the asparagus king, and was like, oh, maybe we can, have this lovely asparagus corner or something, to kind of just instead of doing a sculpture of Thomas Foon, maybe have, a tip of the hat to his legacy in a kind of a playful, fun way, and then have the historic documents really tell his life story, which is so fascinating and such an impact to this community. But I think there's a lot of ways to not be so, where you can allow the artist to have that creativity in telling the story, and then have beside it the history elements that really give that information that people might be seeking. Next slide, please. Another artist who kind of works in that area between history and contemporary dialogues or immigration and contemporary is Kota Izawa, who's a local artist here. Next slide, please. Nova Jang from Los Angeles area, again, somebody who, and this is both materiality and imagery, just again, thinking about how one could play with 2 dimensions and 3 dimensions and think about the site in interesting ways. And again, you could get one of these 2-dimensional pieces that could go on the side of the building as opposed to a mosaic at some place, or maybe just proud of the building. So there's a number of things you can play with, even though we have constraints on the site, and really kind of enliven those areas to make the public art really an integrated and an interesting part of the project. Next slide, please. Some of you may know Mona Caron's work. She has a number of pieces in the South Bay, a beautiful piece by the Union City BART station. This is at the San Jose Convention Center. Somebody who really looks at flora in a way that kind of integrates to a place, that tells the story of a place, or that tells the story of a people. So I'm just dying to think about a piece like this in a mosaic could be absolutely stunning. So just think, just to create something lush and beautiful, and just gives a reference to and a reverence to that part of the history of the area. Next slide, please. Thomas Agren is somebody from the Midwest who does a lot of, sorry, I hope you can see this fairly well, but he does a number of pieces. A lot of times they do speak to the agricultural experience. And again, here's a piece that on the left that he did that was more didactic. So and I'm going to show another piece further on about potentially integrating more, historical with an artistic element. So kind of walking that line a little more closely, where the history and the art come a little closer together. So showing the spectrum of how we might play with the art versus the history, the story of the history. Next slide, please. Jean Shin, and this is a piece she did for a transit station in a predominantly Chinese American community, using the celadon glaze, actually broken pieces of celadon to make mosaics that actually pay reverence to early Chinese celadon pieces and forms as a nod to the community. Next slide, please. And then, so just to go more into that historic interpretation discussion, which is a potential for the part of the mitigation dialogue for the CEQA or EIR, I don't know, somebody's gonna have to correct me on which part of that the dialogue has been in, but as having something that's more directly didactic about the history of the site. Next slide, please. So this is a piece I wanted to show. It's in Los Angeles. It's a Biddy Mason memorial wall, and it's both art and history in a very interesting way, where the artist is telling the story, but also integrating elements that make it really kind of a timeline, but something that feels like it has more of a presence and more of an integration. And I'm going to forget who it's, if you've been in downtown San Jose, there's also, Ben, can you remember, Commissioner Miyagi, can you remember who the piece is for in downtown San Jose that winds through the Paseo? I'm forgetting, but there is one in downtown San Jose that's similar to that, that again, uses art to tell that story. Next slide, please. And this was a piece by Christine Wong Yap that was at the Palo Alto Art Center, somebody who was, again, thinking about the history of the the general area, but thinking about artists again who might be able to integrate both art and history into a similar piece. Next slide, please. Jennifer Wolford is just did a project in San Francisco using patterns to tell stories about community. Again, another person who might, think about dynamically and visually weaving history in with a more of an art, getting closer to that historical display, integrating to the art as well. Next slide, please. And then these are more, next slides are more traditional ways of handling it where the art would be separate from the history, but kind of interesting ways that that might play out. Next slide, please. And these are those traditional metal panels that you see that can be very colorful. They're very sturdy, and they can be, the graphics can be very dynamic as well. So you could have an art piece that's separate from your history piece, but the history piece can also be very exciting visually. Next slide, please. And then this is a couple of options, other ideas that we were looking at, potentially along that south facade, having something that's more perpendicular to the building that you could go along and down through the design, through the history, and actually have kind of a walk through as to kind of break up that building, because as was stated, and if you've been there, it's a very long building, and there's not a lot to break up the facade. So something you could play with this as well, or something more traditional like you see on the right with historic panels and things like that. So I think that's my last slide. Yep. And now we're open to questions or comments.
I have a few questions.
We actually have a public speaker
Oh,
here
okay.
as well.
Great.
Hi. Thanks so much for the opportunity to be here tonight. My name is Alyssa Eagleston-Chislevich, and I'm a member of the Historic Resources Board. So I'm here to just chat a little bit about what we discussed last week at our meeting. And, we were really struck by the rich history of this site, somewhat in terms of its architecture, but really in terms of its ability to speak to Silicon Valley's agricultural past. And that's a past that's largely disappeared from our visual environment. And then also has been referenced already this evening, its cultural significance, particularly to Palo Alto's and California's vibrant Asian community. And so while we know that the proposal calls for significant changes to the building, we do really hope that the site continues to engage with that past. And it really provides an opportunity to, present an aspect of Palo Alto's history that I think maybe, fewer people are aware of into, a really new and vibrant context. So we really do hope that things like the architectural presentation of the building going forward, but also this interpretive signage and the public art can really engage with this opportunity to, teach us all about this really significant site and the people associated with it as well. So I just wanted to bring that up. And then I also wanted to say, so in my professional life, I'm actually an art conservator and I work with public art. And because of the scope of work on this site, I think it presents a really great opportunity to use some site modifications or just kind of built-in features to really set any artwork up for success. And that's things like providing water hookups in the initial plans if you envision it being cleaned that way, and also providing for maintenance access for both crews and equipment as just part of the integrated plan when you do cite the artwork. So that's me with my conservator hat on for a second. But, to go back to just the rich history of the site and how, how important, we felt it was through our discussions to really continue to engage with that. And, I would hope that there'd be a way to, engage with the public art too, to help bring that aspect of the site really to prominence. So thank you so much for the opportunity to be here. And thank you for all the work you do for the city too.
And we have another raised hand from Terry Holzmer. Terry, you may address the commission right now. We can't hear you. Still no sound, Terry. Okay. Can you try again and unmute your microphone and try again? We can't hear you. N- No, some technical issues. Yeah, unfortunately, we can't hear you, Terry. Terry, could you please try and dial into the meeting by calling at 669-900-6833, and we can try this way. Again, the number is 669-900-6833. Yeah, and the meeting ID would be 886-27-84-1441. If you have a copy of the agenda in front of you, it's on the first page.
Okay, we'll continue to monitor for Terry to see if he can join us. It's up to the chair's discretion if you want to move on with questions, and we'll keep an eye out for Terry.
We can entertain questions and we'll try and get Terry on if we can. Commissioner Shen.
Yeah, actually, one of the first questions I have is, I understand that there's a budget for 840,000, which represents 1% of the budgeted $84 million for this project. Earlier, I think there was a reference to contributing or maybe bifurcating and allocating some of it to Inlude. There was also discussion about whether or not there will be opportunities for the park side. My question is, the park side of the project, will there be additional fund for allocated in addition to the 840?
Yes. So any of the in lieu funds, as you know, go into the public art fund, and those
Yeah.
can be pooled and used however the commission wishes. So there will be, when the park is constructed, there will be a 1% for art associated with that, just like there is for Bulwer Park, which is just on the other side of this property.
Actually, I just want to make an observation. I am so heartened by the level of history we have gone into studying about the history of this building, the site, the cannery, and its relations to Palo Alto, and the fact that this was represented efforts of a diverse workforce, many of whom, I mean, I think we have so many representatives in Palo Alto today that are also of diverse background, speaking as an Asian American, particularly in light of the past few years of rising Asian hate. it's incredible to be able to harken back to this history and pay reference to this history, particularly with an eye toward the future. As the world becomes a much more confrontational place, I think when we are able to see this type of artwork, maybe, mosaics of some of these historical pictures, or at least opportunities for people to learn about this history by enjoying the retail or by living in that area and sort of accidentally coming across this living history, I think is incredibly educational and could be incredible community building opportunity for us.
Thank you, Cindy. Very well said. Thank you very much. Jennifer, it's nice to see you again, and the rest of your team. Thank you all for presenting tonight. And Jennifer, I think you're referring to Dr. Ernesto Galarza on that piece in San Jose.
Thank you, Commissioner.
I have a couple of, well, one comment. I think it's an intriguing idea to split the funds for the public art project and then also to go into the in lieu funds. I think that's a great way to spend that money. And one question that I have, I can't remember what those top parts of the those buildings were called. They're kind of like big skylights up there.
The monitor.
Monitors. Is there a way to possibly get some public art up into that? Lighting may be a problem because of the housing that's around it. So I know we've had some complaints about another project here in Palo Alto that has some lighting. But especially in that retail area and that skylight, and people to be able to look up and see something up there, I think it would be a great thing. So, maybe kind of think about that, using those monitors possibly for some sort of public art.
Lauren, do you have some questions?
No, I don't have questions. I'm just really in awe of the use of this space. I'm thrilled that housing will be there, some retail, and that they're keeping the R&D. I appreciate the comments about the building having an awful long flat side and how to address that and maybe make it more beautiful from that part, because we have a lot of beauty going on with the seating area, and I'm sure some planting will happen there. But that kind of long stretch of old building that right now has just the plain mural that I know is a nod to the monitor structure, but I think we could do something really interesting there. So I look forward to the next steps.
I had a few questions about the potential areas for public art. Jennifer, are you suggesting that we would use all of them, or we would choose? So there's that one near the retail space. And my question there is that facade the corrugated metal part, or is that a different surface on that corner where you said that that's a possibility?
That corner by the retail is currently shown as the corrugated metal. I mean, things are still actively in design. So if that felt like a better solution, I think we would want to be consistent across the north side about the materiality. I mean, again, I would I defer to the architects on that piece of it. But, we wouldn't want to have like half and half. So if we did that north side, I think we would want to do the whole north side, right? So I think that those are some of the questions we would want to discuss. I think until we get an artist on board, whether or not we, deal with just the north end and the north south. Wait, what am I thinking? The east end, sorry, that east side and the south side, or go down to the southwest. I don't think you want to split it up, though. It doesn't feel to me like you necessarily want to split it up.
So it sounds like we're going to choose one location, and the corrugated, I thought if we kept it, it was part of the historical preservation. Is that not correct?
Somebody from the design team.
This
wanted
is
to-
Rob. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
correct. We're using some guidelines from our historical consultant to help define the architecture of the building, and the corrugated metal is a part of that process. It's not to say we can't adjust the material, but I think the preference would be to try to keep it corrugated metal.
I understand. So if that is the case, is it okay with the preservation guidelines or the historical guidelines that if we decided to use that space, which may be more visible, could anything be affixed to it, or would that be in violation of the preservation? In other words, could they put something that was relatively two-dimensional, suspended or bracketed onto a surface
Yes.
like that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we it's not so defined that we're restricted that way. So if that was the wish of the commission, then yes, we would explore that, and I think we'd be open to that.
Yeah, we have preliminarily with Jennifer's questions earlier asked our consultant about the idea of a mosaic or a mural where the corrugated metal is. And he, again, without knowing what it is exactly you're trying to put on the building, and is it complementary to that historical or not, but taking a panel and maybe doing it in a stucco base to be able to apply a mosaic to it, depending on the size and context, I think he'd be open to considering that in context to the historical guidelines.
And if I can just say, so the environmental impact report for the project concludes that the demolition of a large portion of the building renders it ineligible for the California Register because it loses its integrity. So no matter what you do, it can't meet the Secretary of Interior standards. So, if council were to approve the project, adopt overriding considerations for that, theoretically, anything can be done to the building because it's not required to meet the Secretary of Interior standards in order to retain its integrity. That said, the feedback we received from the Historic Resources Board, and I think generally the direction we've received from council, is to really try and retain the building to the extent feasible and as much in line with the Secretary of Interior standards. The corrugated metal is a character defining feature of the building, but as Rob mentioned, that doesn't necessarily preclude you from making some changes to it. I don't know if you would have anything to add to that, but generally, I think it would be at the boards and council's discretion to decide if they wanted to allow a mural in lieu of some of the corrugated metal or something, if they wanted to do that.
I'm just asking because I understand that it would be a discretionary decision that is trying to maintain the look and feel and spirit of the historical significance. But I'm thinking of some things that may be two-dimensional applied, or even things like I think about the Brooklyn Museum or BAM, where they maintain the historical significance of the facade, but put an awning, or actually, I think in both cases it was awning or window treatments or things that had showed a great artistic impact, but kept the historical significance. So that was one point. And then my other question is, and I was a little disoriented looking at all the different views, but would you say that the retail area that's a potential spot for public art is more or less visible than, was it the south wall? That's the long wall?
The south or southwest wall, yeah.
You would say that?
Yeah, I mean, the challenge is, currently the site is sort of, I don't know if you've been there, but it's sort of because it's so long and the distance from El Camino and what's between El Camino and the building isn't particularly compelling, but over time that might change. And so that corner may become more interesting. But I think really to where the building is going as a building and where the site generally is going as a site, it feels to me like that retail location is a better opportunity or more flexible opportunity in what could happen with the public art. Doesn't mean we couldn't, if the artist said, oh, let's do something here and then something down there, that it couldn't happen. But if one were to focus, the strength of the elements, that feels to me more. And
Jennifer, if I
for
might add,
please.
Your pleasure, if I might add, what we don't have here to value is what the city does with the parkland, but the retail space does face the future park. We just don't know how it would integrate, which really goes to the conversation about deferring half of the fee when the townhomes are coming forward to get their permits, which will probably be about 2 years out after we make the dedication. And so there's a deferral of that portion. The city would be able to progress the design of the affordable parcel on that side and the parkland on that side, and then maybe even integrate some of this art deferred fee into designing artwork that could be placed in the park or interface with that side of the building towards the park. So we're just missing that piece to be able to give you a really strong answer, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
I wanted to ask if there was one other consideration. When I originally saw the plans and the kind of narrow aerial area in the housing, would it be possible, and is this even in the purview, that there could be some sort of suspended artwork, but up above all the narrow streets in the housing area? And would that qualify, and has that been considered? And because it is a big area but narrow, it could be a great opportunity for some public art.
I would say that the streets need to be maintained clear, access for safety, for fire access. So
it would be just suspended above. No, that wouldn't work.
I don't believe so. We can certainly explore it, but I think it has to be maintained clear.
Okay.
Question. When Tim was talking about deferring part of the fund for 2 years later, that would not be an in lieu of, but to say is the proposal to say, okay, we're going to allocate, let's say, half of it to these 3 little projects here on these locations, but then half of it to something else that we're going to build when the townhomes are up and coming, so we can integrate the designs a little bit.
So there are a couple of things to keep in mind there, and we'll need to work on the phasing of the fee structure and when those are due as part of this agreement. So if they're commissioning art on site, then yes, they have full purview to do that, of course, with Public Art Commission and other review bodies about the location, making sure there's not light pollution or other issues there. If they pay the in lieu, it is the Public Art Commission's charge. Like, if it makes sense to integrate something into that park, once we see if it's going to be naturalized and how much is pulled back, does it make sense to do that there or not? So it's no longer than the applicant's charge to say where those funds can be used once it's paid in lieu. I do want to call out, we do have a public speaker waiting on the phone too.
We can recognize the public speaker.
Terry, if you're able to address if you're on microphone, please address the commissioners now. Still muted.
Hello, can you hear me now? Hello?
Yes, we can hear you
me now?
Yes.
Great. Thank you. You can hear my voice, right? Hello?
Yes.
Okay. All right. This is Terry Holzmer. I just wanted to make a few comments. I am a neighbor that lives less than probably 2 football fields away from this current site. And I wanted to emphasize to everyone on the Public Art Commission to read as much as they can and learn about the importance of this historical site. This is just as important as the wonderful garage, HP Garage, that is honored so well in our city. This site is also deserves the same amount of attention. Thomas Foon Chu was probably the first Chinese American entrepreneur in the whole state of California. His achievement at his time in the early part of the 20th century is simply amazing. What he created was the third largest cannery business in the world, not just in the United States, but in the world. He was an amazing man that treated his workers well. And beyond that, this site is a special site because it really honors one of the last vestiges of a time when our valley here had nothing to do with silicon chips, but it had everything to do with fruits and vegetables. And I hope that you will take the time to learn as much as you can about this site and its importance not only to Palo Alto, but to the whole region. So as a teacher myself in Palo Alto and a teacher of lots of Chinese Americans, this site is very important to them and to our society in general. So thank you for listening, and I hope that you will take this into consideration when you consider the art that must go there. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Do we have any other questions or comments for the team?
I do have some comments. And actually, I just will have one more clarification. So Elise, what you're saying is when the fund, any portion of it is put in lieu, that money, the city decides where it goes. But what Tim was saying was, can we hold back a portion of it and delay the deployment on that site, maybe in the park area? So maybe those two are not consistent.
So the public art fee does not allow for commissioning art on city property. That's really, once it's paid in lieu, that is for the Public Art Commission to determine where it's spent and how.
And my second clarification, well, not clarification, well, maybe just a recommendation. It's so clear that this site is so special because of its rich history and the rare opportunity of this amazing story that we get to celebrate, the accomplishment of this man, the community that he drew, and also the community that was built in Palo Alto. We celebrated diversity over 100 years ago. I think it's a model for today and for future. And I keep looking at these pictures. I remember seeing pictures from 100 years ago of Palo Alto on University Avenue, right in front of Walgreens. And I've always thought if I could only see a Chinese face there, that's the history. I would love if we can have maybe just sort of have a theme and to have all these different artists, the different interpretations of that history. Could it be based on a mosaic of the actual picture, transposing that to people of similar bone structures, but represented in today's clothing, right? Have that passage of time from past to present to future, or even, have that story being told in the sculptures of the fruits and vegetables, right, that are potentially playful, or maybe have it told in other type of format, maybe that are more scientific in terms of surface, right, or in terms of like looks and feel. But maybe there's another angle of telling that story using a different visual language. But it will be multiple opportunities to educate on that topic.
I have one question, and maybe we address this a little bit, but in terms of the real estate in the park, that we're still waiting to see how much space we really have if they're going to naturalize the creek. So it's not clear that we'll be able to even have room for any sort of sculpture treatment, or we're not sure yet.
It's really hard to tell right now because there's no design for it. And we know that we would want to create the breathing room for the naturalization should that occur. But again, once that happens, there will also be a % for art fund at that time, and the commission can readdress that. So if it makes sense to have some of the themes from this historic site extend into that park, which I would suspect would be of interest, that would be the time we would have that discussion.
Anyone else? Any questions, comments?
Just appreciate the comments that have been said already tonight, and wanted to say thank you to Jennifer Easton for taking the cultural significance of this project into consideration when working with artists. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Jennifer, do you feel like you have what you need, or you want to ask for any further clarification on preference of location or any of the things you showed tonight?
Yeah, I mean, I think we have really great comments from the commissioners, so thank you. I mean, I think there's a lot of interest in this project, and your role as the sort of stewards of the culture and cultural expression and historic and artistic expression on the site is quite important in this. So these comments, and especially, thinking about the north side, how, we might trade, some of the architectural design for art design is really helpful. Because I think there's a number of different commissions looking at this project from different points of view. And so you're weighing in on the valuable elements of where it could go, what it speaks to, what it considers, have been very helpful. And we will look to you for that continued guidance in how the project continues to play out. So I'm sure this won't be the last time. I know we're coming back again, and I'm sure you'll probably continue to hear about this project. So I appreciate your deep thinking about this. It's been very helpful.
I'm very excited to see what you guys come back with.
Yeah, thank you.
Move on to our next agenda items.
One quick question, this orientation of the shrine, which is north and
when she was referring to north, I think she was referring to the side facing the townhomes. Often when I've been speaking about it, El Camino is often referenced as north to south. So when in the reports, when I speak to the north side, I'm actually speaking up about the side going to the parking structure. The south side is facing the private or the public street. It'll be a private street with a public access easement over it. And then the side facing the townhomes would be the east end.
okay.
Yeah, I always say north meaning east. My apologies.
Anything else on this project? Okay, so let's move on to now agenda item 3, which is code art. Staff, do you have a recommendation?
Yes, so we're really excited this evening to come to you with the finalist for the major artwork for Code Art. Thank you, everybody. So we had an amazing selection panel. Commissioner Gordon was on there, Liz Sullivan from PACE, Liz Hickok, who participated in the last Code Art, is one of the urban intervention artists, and you can see quite a bit of her art throughout the Bay Area. In fact, she has some in the show opening at the Art Center now. Darren Numoto, who is our head of IT, and Ed Shankin, who is the professor of new media work at UC Santa Cruz. Thank you. So we had 38 applications that were submitted. Some of those were culled down and then sent to the panel. 3 finalists were given a stipend to create a proposal for Code Art, thinking about animating space, thinking about like reimagining these spaces with light, sound, and motion, and having something that's going to spark curiosity and heaven forbid be fun. So we had 3 very different proposals that came in, and the selection panel unanimously, here's the criteria they used. So artistic excellence. All right, that's fine. Innovative use of technology with meaningful public engagement and appropriateness to the theme of Code Art. So drum roll. So Nate Moeller was selected with his proposal, working title, Questions for the Curious Orchard. And it is an immersive installation that would take place in front of City Hall on King Plaza. So thinking about the trees, and Palo Alto being quite fond of its trees and named after a tree. So what you have are some abstracted trees with a central tree in the middle. And that he was thinking about this idea of the trees being able to speak to each other through their root systems. And this idea of contagion, but in a good way, in the way that laughter is contagious, smiles are contagious, fun and joy. And so that there would be certain nodes in these trees where there would be different inputs. So whether it's your heartbeat, or you speak into something, or waving your arms or something to that effect, that the tree would become more animated. And the more animated that each of the nodes became, that central tree would act as sort of this central cog, and the whole thing becomes more vibrant. So there's light elements, sound elements, and motion. Keep in mind, of course, this things will alter a little bit as we get into detailed design, but this is the big picture proposal.
I just saw a installation at the Walker Art Museum in Minneapolis that used that same technology of sewn fabric with the fans. I'm forgetting the artist's name.
And his idea was that he would use hand-dyed fabric, so it would have this beautiful depth to it.
Yeah.
Really like a tree bark, or create sort of a forest environment. So we are here to ask the commission to approve Nathan Mueller as the artist for the anchor artwork for Code Art. And Commissioner Gordon, I don't know if you wanted to add from your perspective on the selection panel.
I mean, we had an incredible interest in this project, of course. And so when we got these selected 3 finalists, after a lot of discussion, we were anxiously waiting to see what they would come back with. And he just really was the most playful, curious, interactive, and really took our requests into consideration. And I love how big these are. I love that he creates the fabric for these. It's really going to be something. So I'm excited.
Do we get to see the other 2 that were considered? No.
We generally don't do that. Okay. The artists don't tend to like that. Yeah.
We're approving the artist, and then funding will be later.
Funding was already approved.
Oh, okay.
So funding for Yeah, so for the major artwork came from our CIP, and for the urban interventions came from the public art fund from private development funds. But that was previously approved before the calls went out.
I move that we accept the Code Art Major Media artwork by Nathan Muller.
I second.
Okay. Thank you. All right, roll call for this agenda item, or for this motion. Commissioner Gordon,
Yes.
Commissioner Miyagi,
Yes.
Commissioner Shen,
Yes.
Vice Chair Waltuck, yes. Code art, oh, it's,
This
oh.
project. Questions for the curious.
That's great.
Very special. Well, we're looking forward to code art. That's exciting. And when will we look at the other, not the anchor artwork, but the other?
The urban intervention. So that selection panel has taken place and they ranked the proposals. So we've reached out to most of the artists. We have one we're not sure is going to be viable. So once we're sure who all of them are, we'll come back to the commission as an information item.
And how many will that be? How many were?
6.
6. Okay. So we'll have this and 6 others. Okay. And agenda item 4, collection care. Do you want to talk about Cloud Forest?
Sure. I'm going to turn, actually, the next 3 items are going to be presented by Nadia. So the first one is conservation treatment for Cloud Forest, which is on the front of the Mitchell Park Library.
Beautiful. Thank you very much. Very excited to present the next collection care items. Winter is a perfect time of the year to take care of the expanding collection. So the Cloud Forest by Rogers Stoller Studio was commissioned and installed at the Mitchell Park Library in 2013 to coincide with the opening of that magnificent facility. Since the installation, public art staff and conservators, we had a few condition reports of the piece, been monitoring it on a regular basis, but it's really time to bring the artist back to perform some detailed inspection and cleaning of the piece. So the artwork partially it's installed on the facade of the building, partially on the exterior and on the interior side of the building. The artist and his studio will be coming to Palo Alto to personally inspect the piece and very detailed, all the connection ports, just how patina is doing, like how, structurally solid they are, and carefully clean and polish the piece. It's made of stainless steel and hand finished with an abrasive pad to create this beautiful sort of pattern on the skin of that lattice. So today we are bringing the motion. We request that the commission approves a total funding in the amount of $3,200 for this treatment. And I welcome any questions or comments.
Pardon me.
I move for the approval of maintenance fund in the amount of up to $3,200 for the conservation treatment of Cloud Forest permanently sited at Mitchell Park Library.
Second.
Roll call. Commissioner Gordon,
Yes, I approve.
Commissioner Miyagi,
Yes.
Commissioner Shen,
Yes.
and Vice Chair Waltuck, yes.
Thank you very much. Moving on to the next item. This is another beloved piece in our collection, Universal Woman by Nathan Oliveira. And here you can see the lead artist actually working in close contact with his creation. So that piece is located in the courtyard of the art center. It's made of bronze. It has a very special patina on it. We have been in touch with the art conservation team, Preservation Arts, who previously performed conservation treatments in condition reporting on this piece. So the treatment would be very similar to those that they performed in the past, including, cleaning the sculpture with a pH neutral detergent, removal of any mineral buildup and debris, reduction of any copper corrosion on the sculpture and the base, and application of hot coat of high performance wax to protect the piece. The total budget for that treatment and report would be as well $3,200, and this treatment would take place probably sometime in early March.
Questions or comments?
Would this, the cleaning and that, would they have to remove the sculpture, or can they do it on site?
No. The team comes to the site. They bring all of their equipment with them, and they work right there. It will take probably one full day for them to complete the project. She's not going anywhere.
And move that we approve of the funds up to $3,200 to conserve our beautiful Universal Woman sited at the Art Center in the Sculpture Garden.
I second.
Roll call, Commissioner Gordon,
Yes.
Commissioner Miyagi,
Yes.
Commissioner Shen,
Yes.
Vice Chair Walczak, yes. And then Nadia, are you gonna talk about
I'll just roll with it.
this? Okay. Good.
Yay, new artwork.
So you have the staff report in front of you. This is another very exciting item we're bringing to you today. It's actually a recommendation for donation of not one, but two artworks into the city collection. Both artworks are offered for donation by current Cabriolet artist, Tara de la Garza, whose piece you are looking at this moment. So just to share a few words about the artist and the offered donation. So Tara has been a Cabriolet artist studio resident since 2018. She is a multidisciplinary media artist who works across a range of media, from collage, it's just an example you can see here, to concrete and installation. So De la Garza's dynamic collage work features large format multimedia works assembled from various natural history images. So the artwork offered for donation today comes from her Progeny series that the artist worked on between years 2012 and 18. These works are De la Garza's meditations on nature and diversity that envision what it would be like if life on the planet was undisturbed by human organisms. So the pieces, the artwork is pieced together from various natural history images and references. The piece is framed and ready to be displayed, and it's multimedia photographic and digital collage, 18 by 24 inches. And another piece that I'm presenting to you today is by a Cabriolet artist, Robin Mallory. So Robin comes from a poetry and psychology background. She's a Palo Alto-based mixed media artist. She infuses tenderness into the images, objects, and installations that she creates. From her background as a therapist, she uses her experience of vulnerability and healing to ask questions of and give shape to what it is to see and to be seen. She draws a parallel between the urban industrial landscape and psychic and emotional state of its inhabitants. So the artwork offered for donation is titled Softly Filling Holes. It explores the idea and action of harm and repair, how present action can touch past wounds in the effort to heal them. The two large chemical vats that you see on this image were part of the chemical fertilizer plant that operated for over 50 years and employed hundreds of people and did a great deal of harm to the surrounding environment and waterways nearby. The cotton balls that you may see sort of like surrounding the opening of those vats.
I was looking for them and I couldn't see them. Okay.
It's a intricate detail, right? So a common supply used in physical healing were placed in the chemical drums as a symbol of active repair and healing, and to bring attention to the need to consider how to heal wounds that cannot be easily repaired. So with that, the recommendation today that a Public Art Commission accepts the donations of artworks by Kabyle artist Tara de la Garza and Robin Mallory. Thank you.
Does anyone have questions, comments, motion?
So move that we accept the two artworks by Robin Mallory and can't find her name.
Tara de la
De La Cruz.
Tara de la Garza.
De La Garza. And one comment, this kind of reminds me of Star Wars, the Mallory one.
I've seen Tara's work at the Open Studios, and it is so interesting. And that's a good photograph of it, but it's cool because it's a collage. So I think that's a wonderful. They're both wonderful gifts. So I second your motion to accept these wonderful art pieces of art.
And roll call, Commissioner Gordon
Yes.
and Commissioner Miyagi.
Yes.
Commissioner Chen
Yes.
and Vice Chair Walczak, yes.
Thank you so much.
And do we have any announcements from the group?
I have something fun to share. We had a site visit with Rios Magos, and the sculpture is painted. They just finished painting today, and we are anticipating installing on Wednesday morning.
So will that be up until code art comes up, or?
That's a great question. So the idea was that it would be up 6 months to 1 year. So it certainly may overlap with code art. It will be off on one side. But we just have to see how it weathers, how people interact with it and whatnot.
Great.
Exciting.
Yep.
Yeah.
Great.
So I'm sorry, when did you say it will be installed?
Wednesday.
Yeah, wow. Great. And, any information on the new artists in residence? Like, is that,
QRT is scheduled to start in February.
okay, great. All right, I think we're adjourned.
Thank you.